The world had two heartbeats now. One was the dull, incessant thud of his own pulse in his ears. The other was the sky. It was a violent, awe-rhythmic drumming of thunder that never truly faded, only swelled and receded like a monstrous tide. Elias called it the long drizzle. A blackly ironic term for the perpetual tempest that had swallowed Kentucky since the dead decided to walk. The rain was a constant, ranging from a miserable seep to a torrential assault that could strip bark from trees. But the rain was just the percussion. The lightning was the lead singer, a screaming, electric predator that hunted the landscape. His current shelter, a boarded-up gas station on the outskirts of Muldraugh, was a death trap. Every flash of lightning illuminated the shambling silhouettes of the dead through the grimy windows. Every crack of thunder was a gamble. Sometimes, it was followed by the wet smack of a Zed being pulped by a direct strike. More often, it was followed by the groan of the station's metal roof threatening to peel back like a tin can lid. The final straw came during a particularly vicious squall. A bolt struck the telephone pole across the road, not 50 feet away. The explosion of superheated air slammed into the gas station, blowing out the two windows he hadn't managed to fully reinforce. Rain and wind tore through the breach, and with them, 3 sodden corpses, knocked off their feet but already scrabbling in the mud, crawling towards him. Elias dealt with them a frantic, clumsy dance with a crowbar in the strobing darkness, but he knew it was over. This place was a sieve. He needed a fortress. He had a place in mind. A dream he had clung to during the worst nights. The fire station in Rosewood. Brick walls, a concrete foundation, a multi-story structure he could defend from the top down. It had a massive garage, perfect for a workshop, and a flat, sturdy roof. A roof he could build on. The journey to Rosewood was a special kind of hell. The mud sucked at his worn combat boots, and the wind drove the rain into his face with the force of tiny needles. The Zeds were a constant, miserable presence, their groans often lost in the howl of the storm. But the storm was also an unwitting ally. He saw a small horde of them, maybe a dozen, get scattered like bowling pins when a sheet of lightning hit a nearby oak tree, the trunk exploding into a shower of lethal splinters. He learned to move with the thunder, using the deafening claps to mask the sound of his own passage. He arrived at the fire station looking more like a creature of the swamp than a man. It was, as expected, infested. But brick walls were kinder than flimsy plaster. He cleared the ground floor methodically, using the heavy fire doors to funnel the dead into kill zones. It took 2 days of bloody, exhausting work, fueled by stale crackers and the last of his canned chili. Once the ground floor was secure, he sledgehammered the internal staircase, making the second floor, accessible only by a rope he could pull up. His fortress was established. Now, the real work began. His first priority was the storm breaker, as he had dubbed the theoretical device, in his mind. Before the world ended, Elias had been an electrical engineer, specializing in surge protection for industrial sites. He knew the principles. A standard lightning rod was a simple invitation, guiding a strike safely to ground. What he needed was a repellent. A massive, high-amperage, electromagnetic dispersal array. It wouldn't just ground the lightning, it would create a localized electromagnetic field that would push the ionic leaders of a lightning strike away, forcing them to ground elsewhere. It was ludicrously ambitious, bordering on science fiction, but in a world of Walking Dead and perpetual superstorms, ludicrous was the new baseline for survival. He needed metal. And electronics. Lots of both. His days became a grueling routine. He'd wait for a lull in the storm's fury, a moment when the rain was merely heavy instead of blinding, and make scavenging runs in a beat-up pickup truck he had hot-wired. He raided warehouses for metal sheets and welding supplies. He stripped every dead server, every busted television, every forgotten office computer for circuit boards, capacitors, and miles of copper wiring. Back at the station, under the buzz of a single bare bulb powered by a noisy gas generator, he worked. He learned metalworking from a dog-eared textbook, the screech of his grinder a counterpoint to the howling wind. He welded metal plates over every window, leaving only small, reinforced slits to peer through. He dragged a massive metal workbench into the garage, his muscles screaming in protest. The reinforced ceiling was his first major project. He spent weeks bolting steel struts to the existing rafters in the garage, then layering metal sheets between them. It was ugly, brutalist architecture, but it felt safer than a cathedral. The storm breaker array was his masterpiece. He built a core from scavenged transformer coils, wrapping them in what felt like 100 miles of copper wire. He mounted it on a thick steel mast in the center of the main roof, surrounded by 4 smaller sub-arrays. It looked like a bizarre, metallic sculpture, an offering to an angry sky god. He ran thick, insulated cables down the side of the building to a bank of car batteries, which were in turn hooked to a pair of generators for constant, redundant charging. Flipping the switch for the first time was the most terrifying moment of his life. The generators groaned under the sudden load. A low hum vibrated through the entire building, a deep thrum he could feel in his teeth. Outside, the rain continued its assault. He watched through a slit in a barricaded window, his heart hammering. A flicker of lightning spiderwebbed across the clouds directly overhead. He flinched, bracing for the impact, the inevitable explosion. Nothing. The bolt seemed to bend. It struck the ground 100 yards away, with a furious crack. He let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding for a full minute. It was working. He hadn't been incinerated. Next, food. Scavenging was a fool's game long term. He needed to grow his own. The reinforced ceiling in the garage was for this exact purpose. He built a reinforced greenhouse on top of it, a box of thick plexiglass and steel beams. Inside, he set up hydroponic trays salvaged from a garden center and a row of soil beds filled with dirt he had laboriously hauled up bucket by bucket. Light was the problem. The constant cloud cover meant sunlight was a distant memory. He needed a dedicated, reliable power source just for the grow lamps. The gas generators were too hungry, too loud, too temporary. His solution came from another reckless scavenging run, this time to a small, private airfield. Tucked away in a maintenance hangar, covered in a dusty tarp, was a diesel generator the size of a small car. It was meant to power the entire airfield in an outage. Getting it back was an epic struggle involving winches, chains, and a perilous drive in the pickup, but he managed it. He installed it in the fire station's secondary garage bay, soundproofing the room as best he could with old mattresses and insulation. Its deep, steady rumble was a far more reassuring sound than the sputtering of the gas engines. With the big generator powering the bank of grow lights, his greenhouse became an oasis of impossible green in a world of gray. The first time he ate a tomato he had grown himself, its warmth and sweetness exploding in his mouth, he nearly wept. It was a taste of a world he thought was lost forever. He had done it. One evening, a storm of unprecedented violence rolled in. The sky turned a bruised purple, and the wind shrieked like a banshee. Elias stood on the second floor, looking out of his reinforced slit. The storm breaker array hummed, its power a tangible presence. Lightning strikes rained down around the station, a devastating artillery barrage. He saw walkers lifted off their feet by the wind, tossed into walls, and impaled on the wreckage of the old world. He saw one struck directly by a bolt that missed his protective bubble, vanishing in a momentary flash of white-hot light. Inside his fortress, the lights didn't even flicker. In the garage below, the hydroponics gurgled softly. In the greenhouse above, his young corn stalks stood straight and tall under the artificial suns. The sound of the storm was immense, a terrifying symphony of destruction. But it was outside. Elias walked over to a small table where he ate his meals. He picked up another fresh tomato, its skin smooth and perfect. The rumble of the diesel generator was a steady, comforting beat beneath his feet. The hum of the storm breaker was a shield over his head. The storm raged, the dead shambled, and the world tore itself apart. But here, in this brick and steel sanctuary, Elias took a bite of his tomato and felt, for the first time since it all began, completely and utterly safe. He had not conquered the storm, nor had he defeated the dead. He had simply, through sheer will and ingenuity, built a place where they no longer mattered.